Hey everybody, my name is Dee Dee and I thought that I would show a couple of videos over a space of time to give you a few insights into some cooking habits and some fun things that you can make right in your own home, and you don't have to run to the store and grab them. You can just make them right up with just a few ingredients that you have in home. So today what I'm going to teach you is a recipe that I learned as a small child that came from my grandmother, and my mother used to make them all the time, and they're just basic homemade biscuits. I think everyone can enjoy biscuit, and if you have any allergies to flour, I'd be really curious as to how you incorporate your gluten-free flours, your rice flours and things like that into the recipe, because I think that you can, and I think that it would in turn come out successful, but would really like to hear your advice as well. So we're going to get started. I have a little bit of music in the background. I always like to have music on when I'm cooking, so pardon that, but hopefully you enjoy that as well. It's actually piano guys, so I don't know if any of you have heard them. If you have, like it. They're great. I just love their music, and they have some good peppy music, and they have some nice relaxing music, and their Christmas albums are fantastic. So you'll probably hear me talk about them a little bit later in some of my other videos too, because they're really great. I enjoy a lot of different kinds of music, but Piano Guys is kind of my go-to relaxing music. So let's get started now. I'm going to make a double batch of biscuits today. So if you are making for a little bit smaller, maybe there's just two of you. Well, there's only two of us too, but we love biscuits. So I always make a double batch. So first you're going to start off, you're going to need 4 cups of flour. So keep in mind, I am doubling it. So it's 4 cups. So the normal recipe is 2 cups. Okay. So everything that I do, just cut in half if you want to do that today, but we're going to do a double recipe because I do a few different things with the biscuits throughout the week that I'm going to share with you at the end of the video once the biscuits come out. So there's kind of a 2-part segment here. So first off, we're going to start off with 4 cups of flour, and if you want to sift your flour, go ahead. I don't, because when I transfer my flour into my container, it kind of fluffs it up. But if you have some clumps in your flour, throw it through a sifter really quick. That's totally fine. And you can kind of just gauge it from there, okay? So I have some flour in there already, but 4 cups of flour. You're gonna need more later on, so just kind of put that off to the side. I store my flour in these big mason jars, and I just label my flour and sugar and things like that because I buy them in bulk. I try to buy 50 pounds at a time, 50-pound bags, just because I do a lot of baking. So I do use it quite frequently, actually. So I've got 4 cups of flour in here, and then the next thing that we're going to do after that is we're going to add the vegetable shortening, or Crisco. I use Crisco probably just because I always have. There isn't really, if you have a generic brand that you use, you can definitely do that, or if you have a different type of vegetable shortening, you definitely want to do it, but make sure that it's shortening. If you want to use lard still, for those old-fashioned bakers out there, go for it. You can't go wrong with lard, seriously. I know it's not the most healthiest thing in the world, fat-wise, but so this is just pure Crisco vegetable shortening. And right in here, I've got actually 10 tablespoons because the recipe calls for 5. We're doubling it. Don't forget about that. So I've got 10 tablespoons of shortening that you just dump right in there. Okay. And then the next thing that I'm going to put in after that is salt. So the recipe calls for 1 teaspoon of salt. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I go ahead and measure this. Some people put it in the palms of their hand or whatever, but I'm going to use the handy dandy teaspoon. Sometimes I measure, sometimes I don't. It depends. So with salt, I usually try and measure just because. So 2 teaspoons of salt for this double recipe. Okay, don't forget, it's just 1. And what I'll do is I'll post the normal recipe so that you can kind of have it. I'm working on a cookbook, so stay tuned for that. All the recipes are recipes that I grew up with. So they're ones that either my Nana Wiley or my Nana Record made. They're recipes that I have invented and made, as well as some of my favorite recipes. I have recipes from my mom in there. So it's kind of like a family recipe book. It means a lot to me. my niece and I made a cookbook, kind of cookbook journal kind of thing for my cousins and other members of our family. And that was just so fun that I kind of want to incorporate it and make it a little bit bigger. I want to take some of those recipes that were my Nana Records famous recipes that all of us kids loved. But also my Nana Wiley was a wonderful cook too, and my mother is a tremendous cook. So I come by it honest. So far we've got the shortening in here, we've got the flour in here, we've got the salt. We have one more ingredient to add before we start mixing, and that's the baking powder. Baking powder is so important for biscuits because this is what makes them fluffy and rise really good. So in the recipe, it calls for 1 tablespoon of baking powder. So we're gonna do the 2 tablespoons, and I actually have a 2 tablespoon jobby right here. So 2 tablespoons of the baking powder is going to go into the mix. Okay. So we've got all the dry ingredients incorporated so far. So the trick to nice fluffy biscuits is you can beat it all you want before you add the liquid. Okay, so if you don't want to hand mix this or use, I have a pastry cutter here. If you don't want to use one of these, then put it right in the mixer or a handheld mixer. And you can just beat it. And what you want to do is you want to make sure, you're just making sure that all of the Crisco incorporates into all of the flour. Okay, so you're going to mix it until you see these little tiny balls form. And that is just the Crisco and the flour incorporating together. And to better incorporate it, some people like to use a mixer just because they don't want to hand mix it, or maybe you have arthritis in your hands, or you have a difficult time mixing it, or you just don't want to take the time to do it. That's okay too. So throw it through the mixer and beat it as much as you want. You're not going to over mix it. They're not going to be tough or anything. If the kids are crying and you have to go tend to the kid and the mixer's mixing, it's not going to harm it, as long as there's no wet ingredients in it. So that is the trick. You want to make sure that all your dry ingredients are incorporated really, really well before the wet ingredients start. Okay? So just kind of a hint there. And again, if you're taking notes and you're watching this right now, just put in a star right after the dry ingredients. And then you can put a little side note that you can mix well before the wet ingredients. So that's just kind of my pie crust is the same way. You mix all your dry ingredients together, and then once you add the water to the pie crust, or if you happen to use milk, I use water, which we'll be doing one of those in a later segment. I'll be doing some pie crust. So I love homemade pie crust. Actually, okay, confession time. I have never bought a pie crust, ever. I've always just made them. So confessions of me. Okay, so the next ingredient is milk. Now, this does not say milk, this says half and half. Because I love to use half and half in biscuits. I don't know if it makes a huge difference, but to me it does. So half and half is what you need. Now, this is where the technical and really intricate cooking comes, okay? I'm not measuring this at all. So what you're going to do is you're going to pour the milk into the mixture here and just kind of really lightly with your fork, mix it around, and you're going to keep adding the half and half or milk until it gets sticky. Not really a dough, past the dough stage into the more sticky stage. I think that was the end of the half and half or the milk, and that is going to be perfect. So we gauged that really well. I had 2 containers that were kind of half used that I was using for some other recipes, and that is going to be awesome. Okay, so you can see that it's kind of sticky, okay, very sticky, and that's exactly what we want. All right, so now that we've got our mixture incorporated, I'm going to take a well of flour. Let me put this off to the side so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. So this is where, I am all done that. This is where the fun part comes, okay? Now if you want the kids to help, well, bless your heart for that, okay? But because it's gonna be messy, all right? My mother, I love her. She has the patience of Job, okay? I always wanted to cook, always. And I had this cookbook that I'm gonna actually post that was my very first storybook / cookbook. So this dated back to when I was 5, 6 years old when I first started cooking. And it's called Susie's New Stove. Now, if any of you ever had that cookbook, I want you to chime in and say that you had it. And if you still have it, I definitely want you to send me a picture of it, okay? So it's the best. And mine is completely beat up. It's actually up in my cooking cabinet, way up top. I used that all the time. Oh, it's just so great. Okay, so we're gonna turn this mixture out onto the flour. Okay, and I just made a big well of flour right there. And this big sticky mixture, this is where it gets messy, everybody, but hey, good cooks always get messy. And I'm gonna scrape all this right into a big pile, okay? Now, you could tell that I did not mix that much. I wasn't like stirring, and that's what I mean by over mixing, is when you take a mixture and you just keep beating it and beating it. With bread, you can knead it all you want. With biscuits and pie crust, you don't want to do that, okay? So now what we're going to do is, I'm going to dust my hands a little bit, okay? And then we're going to sprinkle the top with flour. That's why you always want to make sure you have your flour bin right next to you, okay? So you're going to make your well, you're going to come up with your flour and kind of coat the sides so that they're not, so you can kind of handle them and they're not really, really sticky, okay? So after you incorporate your flour around the well or make the well, you're going to fold over your biscuits. And then I'm just going to fold them in once. And then I'm going to take the back and I'm going to fold it in twice. Okay? So, and then sprinkle a little on the top. And that's it. You don't want to fold it anymore. You folded it a couple of times. You've got it all situated there. So now I'm just going to press down with my hands. Now you can dig out your rolling pin if you wanted to. Okay? And for big batches, maybe that's a good thing. But now I'm just going to kind of go around and you're going to use your hands as your measuring tool. Now, if you want to get fancy and get your little, some of you have one of those little dough measures, you can do that. I'm not saying that you can't do that. I'm just saying that I just use my hands for a lot of baking measurements. So as you can see, I'm kind of guiding my hand around as I'm pressing down. What I'm doing is I picked a measurement on my hand that I like for a thickness of my biscuits. Now, if you're just starting out and this is your first time through, okay, you're not going to have that measurement down. But good rule of thumb, it depends on how thick you want your biscuits, okay? I use that my guide is my pinky finger. That space right there, my pinky finger, once that dough comes above that pinky finger, like kind of in the middle of my ring finger, I know that's where I want it, okay? Because it's about an inch, a little over an inch thick. Now, you may not want your biscuits to rise much beyond that, but I do. So now look at this fancy biscuit cutter right here. Don't you like it? I do have a biscuit cutter. And for smaller biscuits, I dig it out and use it. It's actually one of my grandmother's, but I'm making some big ones because these are going to be used for breakfast sandwiches for the week for my husband. So I always make a few biscuits so that I can later on make some breakfast sandwiches and assemble those. I may do a video on that just so that you can see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the cup. I dipped it in flour so that it will, so it won't stick because this dough is sticky in the middle. Once we get cutting through this, it's going to get sticky. So you want to dust your biscuit cutter or your cup or whatever you use every time you cut. That's kind of a word to the wise, just because it just prevents a big mess later or from it sticking and just not cutting the way it needs to. If you dust your cutter every time, I know it's a pain, but it definitely will help in the long run. Now you can see I'm kind of going around. Now some of these aren't completely perfect, and that is okay because cooking doesn't have to be perfect all the time. You want it to come out perfect, yeah, but it doesn't have to look perfect to begin with. So I'm going to have some leftover here, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, that's kind of a lot of leftovers. I can't really make one big biscuit out of that, okay? But I will once I incorporate it all together. So here's what we're gonna do. I want you to just kind of squish it and do that folding action again. You're gonna fold it up, fold it over, and then back again, okay? And then just make a little cone with it. That's gonna incorporate it all together, and just work it lightly. You don't have to beat it to death. Push it back down. You should still feel a lot of give to this mixture. Should still be nice and soft, okay? And that's what you want. So again, gauge that finger, move it around, or use your measuring tool, whatever is going to be the best for you. And you're gonna cut the last few biscuits. Now I've got a little bit left, maybe enough to make one. So I'm just gonna do a hand one. That's the fun part right there. It's when you can make the last one all to yourself and make it just as pretty as you want it to, or not pretty. You can make a heart, or heart biscuits would be fun to make. You could do a heart biscuit. That's the thing, if you wanted to make these for kids, dig out the cookie cutters. That's a great way to do it. Have some fun with the kiddos. Okay, it's a good Sunday afternoon activity. It's Sunday here, just got home from church, and so I thought, hey, I better make some biscuits. Okay, so I've got everything all together. Now we need our baking dish. Now I've preheated the oven as well. You're gonna have to have a really hot oven for this. So 475 is what you want your oven on. It's hot, but 475 is the key on these, okay? So I'm going to go ahead. I didn't know how big my baking dish needed to be because these are big ones today, which is good. Now I'm going to fix these as I go. And this is where I'm going to make them pretty. You just pat them a little bit, okay? And that's how you get your perfectly round shape, and then pat down. So I'm just kind of going around and around and around. Okay, and I'm not overly working them, which is very important. Okay, I'm going to kind of butt them up next to each other. Give them so they're touching, because the baking powder in them will make them rise. So we don't have to worry about that. I'm just going to lay them in just so. And I think I'm going to be able to fit all these in here just right. And again, use your own judgment with this. It's totally fine, guys, if you say, oh, that one didn't work, this one didn't work, we're going to make a little small one. Okay, I got a couple kind of put right into the bottom of this. See, I might move this one. Here we go. So with this cutter, my fancy cutter, all right, I was able to make 12. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, sorry, not 12, 10. If you use a regular biscuit cutter, I can usually get anywhere from 10 to 12 biscuits with a normal biscuit cutter with one batch, okay? So depending, that kind of helps you gauge if you're going to make these for your whole family, or if there's just 2 of you, or if you're going to a party, whatever, that you can kind of gauge that. So if you make regular biscuits to this thickness, it's going to be about that many. These are big. I mean, these are good size, but they make great, great breakfast sandwiches. So I'm going to go ahead and bake these at 475 for about 20 minutes until they're golden brown on the top. Not real brown, but just the golden brown. And when they're done, I'll take them out and we'll finish it up. So a couple of things that I want to go over with you is with the biscuits and the baking time. If you've done any type of baking, you know that it's not always exact. Everybody's oven is different. Everybody's mixture is going to be different. So therefore your cooking time is going to be different. If you set your timer for 20 to 25 minutes, and at 20 minutes your biscuits are looking pretty brown, take them out, okay? That is going to be your gauging point, is your eyes. Look and just see how well they are developing as time goes on. If you look and it's the 20-minute mark and they still have some white on them, as far as they don't quite look done or like the classic biscuit, keep them in there. All right, and check them every minute or two. When they start to turn a little golden brown, you know, just a hint of golden brown, you know that you've only got just a couple of minutes left and they're going to be ready. If you have a convection oven, okay, that's another thing. If you put that on convection oven mode, it's not going to take 20 minutes. So it's going to be probably more like 18. Okay, it's not going to cook them in half. It's not going to cook them in 10. But it definitely won't take as long. So let's check and see how the other ones came out. Like I said, I made some earlier, and I think that they are, yes. Oh, these look really good. Really, really good. I'm going to put these other ones in just so that they can start their baking. And I'm going to show you these beautiful, beautiful biscuits. They're golden brown on the top, and they're ready to go. Now, if you like them a little bit more brown than that, then pop them back in the oven for just a few minutes, okay? And I'll just let them rest a little while, and then they're ready to take out and put butter on them and dig in. So I hope you really enjoyed this. We got some more videos coming up soon. I'm going to teach you how to do pie crust, some of the basic breads. We're going to get into cooking some desserts and maybe some meal preps, things like that. Just as a hint, these ones were definitely made bigger. They're made with this little fancy biscuit cutter right here, a juice glass, but it's a nice wide mouth juice glass, because these are going to be breakfast sandwiches for the week for my husband. So what I do here is, after these cool down, I dig out some eggs and sausage and cheese, and I cook that all up, assemble them together, wrap them in parchment paper individually, and then put them into a baggie. And all you got to do is take them out of a baggie, keep them in that parchment paper, microwave them for 1 minute in the microwave, and it is a wonderful breakfast sandwich. The biscuits are still nice, and they've got a little crunch on the outside. They're nice and soft and warm on the inside, and it's a great breakfast go-to. You know, take them to work with you, or just grab them, make a ham and cheese biscuit sandwich or something like that. You can really, those make-ahead meals are just so fun to do. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for more. Like the page, share the page, and I'll be back soon. Have a great day. Thank you.